Hello, boys and girls. Meeting you after a long time. I hope everyone is well and very comfortably in their home. Today, we will be doing one chapter that has been included in the Class 11 syllabus, ISC, a story named Salvatore by William Somerset Maugham. An extremely simple story, but how well the character of this young man, first a boy and then a man, how well his character is enumerated by the writer. How wonderful he looks in front of us. A very ordinary man, but with some extraordinary qualities. To be more precise, with an extraordinary quality. Now let us see what this quality is and if we can learn or be as simple as this young man has been. The story William Somerset Maugham's Salvatore. Now, if you have your textbooks in front of you, just turn on to page 5. I won't read the entire thing, I will read only parts of the paragraphs have been printed on page 5. William Somerset Maugham, Maugham. Most of you must be knowing and will know that it is pronounced as Mom, not Morgum. G is silent. William Somerset Maugham, an English playwright, storyteller, and a novelist. Now, I have underlined or highlighted a few words. His style is unadorned. Unadorned, see this particular word? Unadorned. There's no decoration, ornamentation, very high vocabulary. No, simple. Unadorned style, simple style. Cosmopolitan setting. Cosmopolitan. We live in a cosmopolitan city where people of all languages, all categories come together. So, cosmopolitan setting, and he had a shrewd understanding of human nature. Just see this shrewd understanding. He understood human nature very well, and he has understood the nature of Salvatore. Then, if we go a little below, you will find it is said he avoids verbose sentimentality. You will find he avoids verbose sentimentality, favoring spare yet vivid prose. See, I've underlined it or highlighted it. Verbose sentimentality. No. Full of sentimentality. No. So I will repeat this word verbose and sentimentality. Where exactly can you find the lack of verbose sentimentality? Where exactly you can find that he has not used or avoided verbose sentimentality? Favoring vivid prose. It comes in a very clear way. Then, of course, he has written 4 books primarily: Of Human Bondage, The Moon and Sixpence, Cakes and Ale, and The Rager's Edge. Then, if we scroll a little bit, we'll find the last paragraph. The short story Salvatore, apparently a narrative about the life of a young Italian fisherman. Salvatore is Italian, comes from Italy, the islands of Ischia and Vesuvius. Young Italian fisherman, his disappointment in love. He is disappointed in love. He does not find the girl whom he thinks he truly loves. He does truly love the girl, but unfortunately, it's not the same the other side also. Now, if we go to the story proper, simple story, yet very poignantly or very touchingly told to us and narrated to us by Somerset Maugham. Salvatore by Somerset Maugham. He begins the story by saying this: I wonder if I can do it. What? is it that he wants to do? No, not now. We will know it right at the end of the story. You yourself will find out. Somerset Maugham writes, I wonder if I can do it. Will I be able to do it? What? Let us read the story first. I knew, Mom is the narrator here. He says, I knew Salvatore first when he was a boy of 15 with a pleasant face, a laughing mouth, and a carefree eyes. Just see, 15. When the story starts, Salvatore is a boy of 15 years, a very pleasant, a face which you would always like to see, laughing mouth. He was not always laughing, but his mouth showed that he was a very happy go like fellow, and his eyes were very frank. He spoke through his eyes, carefree eyes. He used to spend the morning lying about the beach with next to nothing on, and his brown body was as thin as a rail. He was a skinny fellow, as thin as the rail lines. He was full of grace. He was in and out of the sea all the time, swimming with his clumsy, effortless stroke. I have highlighted clumsy, effortless stroke. He used to swim well, but he was not a trained swimmer. Trained swimmers, they know how to dive, they know how to give their strokes. Their strokes are not clumsy, water scattered here and there. No, the strokes are very well trained strokes. But he is a villager, and villagers, you will find boys, village boys particularly, their strokes are everywhere and anywhere, but yet they are good swimmers, common to fisher boys. Scrambling up the jagged rocks on his hard feet, for except on Sundays, he never wore shoes, and he would throw himself into the deep water with a scream of delight, except on Sundays when he wore shoes. Otherwise, he never wore shoes, whether he is swimming or whether he is running up, scrambling, running up the jagged rocks, rocks which are uneven rocks. Okay, jagged meaning uneven rocks on his hard feet. Only on Sundays he would wear shoes, otherwise, he would just dive into the deep water, screaming delightfully. His father was a fisherman who owned his little vineyard where grapes grow, and Salvatore acted as a nursemaid. He looked after his two younger brothers. He shouted to them to come inshore when they ventured out too far, and made them dress when it was time to climb the hot, wind-clad when it was time to climb the hot, vine-clad hill for a frugal midday meal. Frugal, simple, not too much, not at all too much, because they could not afford too much of food. Just about to fill their stomach, frugal, the minimum. So he acted as a nursemaid, means he looked after his two younger brothers, he made them dress, he made them come for his for their frugal midday meal. He was a good brother. But boys on those sudden paths grow apace, and in a little while he was madly in love with a pretty girl who lived on the Grand Marina. Boys of those sudden parts of Italy where he stayed, they grow apace meaning quickly. You'll find the word apace, quickly. And he grew up quickly, and suddenly we come to know through the narrator that he is in love with a pretty girl who lived on the Grand Marina. Now, a description of the girl. She was a very beautiful looking girl, pretty nevertheless. Now, a description of the girl. She was a beautiful looking girl, very pretty, who had eyes like forest pools and held herself like the daughter of the Caesars. Clear eyes. It was clear, crystal clear, very expressive eyes, forest pools, and held herself like the daughter of the Caesars, as if she was the daughter of a king. Very royally she used to walk. They were affianced. Salvatore and this girl, they were affiance meaning they were engaged to be married. But they could not marry till Salvatore had done his military service, and when he left the island, which he had never left in his life before, to become a sailor in the navy of King Victor Emmanuel, he wept like a child. Though they were engaged to be married, they could not marry because Salvatore had to complete his quota of military service. And for the first time, Salvatore was leaving his island. He has never left his island. He had to serve in the navy of King Victor Emmanuel, and when he was leaving the island, he wept just like a little boy, a child. It was hard for one who had never been less free than the birds to be at the beck and call of others. It was harder still to live in a battleship with strangers instead of in a little white cottage among the vines. Why was it difficult for Salvatore? Salvatore was a free boy, jumping into the river, looking after his little brothers, doing whatever he wanted to, rushing up or climbing or scrambling up the jagged rocks. Yes, he could do whatever he wanted to. But here he had to be, see the word, he had to be at the beck and call of others, command of others. Whatever they did, whatever they said, he had to listen to them. It was difficult for him to do that. And it was even harder to live in a battleship, always confined in a ship with strangers. In his island, he used to have the white cottage among the vines. He was free. Here he is just like a prisoner, though he was not a prisoner, but he was here among strangers. And now, when the ship comes to a shore, sometimes the ship comes to the shore, the ship has to be anchored. So sometimes he used to walk in the cities, noisy, friendless cities with streets so crowded they was frightened to cross them when he had been used to silent paths and the mountains and the sea. Mountains, sea, silent path. Here, when he had to walk in the noisy, friendless cities with only strangers all around him, he had to cross the roads. He was frightened because he was not used to seeing so much of traffic. There in the village, everything was so silent. Maybe once in a while, a vehicle used to come. He used to be in the mountains, he was to be surrounded by the sea. So it was very difficult for him to be here. First, he had to be always the command of others, and then in a battleship, confined in a battleship among strangers, and then if the ship came and stood at the shore, anchored at the shore for some time, he had to walk in the noisy, friendless cities, crossing roads, being very frightened, always among strangers. Now the writer says, I suppose it had never struck him that Ischia, which looked at every morning just like a fairy island in the sunset to see what the weather would be the next day, or Vesuvius, pearly in the dawn, had anything to do with him at all. Now he says, I suppose it had never struck him that Ischia, I have highlighted two words, see, Ischia and Vesuvius. This story is set in the Italian islands of, one is here Ischia and one is Vesuvius. That is where the story is set. Now the writer says it had never struck him that Ischia, it's just like when you're with someone, you never realize the importance of that person, or you have the particular thing, you don't realize the importance of this pen. But when it is no longer there with you, you realize the importance. You live in a very beautiful looking town, silent perhaps. Not many people live in that town. How beautiful the town looks, particularly when the sun is rising or the sun is setting. We don't take note of the sunrise and sunset. But when we are in another place where everything is so noisy and crowded, etc., then we realize the importance of that place. Then we realize, oh my God, the sunrise looked so beautiful. The sunset also looked equally beautiful.